Thank you for joining us today live session on Immigration Legal Assistant Diploma at Ashton College. My name is Pamela and I'm part of the marketing team here. I'll be hosting this afternoon. I'm pleased to be joined by Alexandra Callinan, one of our instructors for this program. In this session, we'll explore Alexandra's background and experience, discuss the structure and highlights of the program, talk about the essential skills in the field, and review the types of career opportunities available after graduation. Feel free to submit your questions using the chat or Q&A features at the bottom of your screen. We'll get to as many as we can during the Q&A portion at the end. If you like more information about the program, how to apply, or Ashton College in general, you'll find helpful links in the resources section or in the video description if you're watching later on YouTube. So let's get started. Alexandra, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here as always.
Let's start with the first question. I like to begin by asking you to tell us a bit more about the immigration legal field and what it involves.
Yes, so the immigration legal field, it's a big area. We have law firms, we have immigration consultants and their firms. There's NGOs, there's legal clinics, there's it's pretty much anything you can think of. There's probably something there in terms of helping people navigate Canada's immigration system. So a lot of the time what this looks like is, for myself, I'm a paid representative typically, and most consultants and lawyers are as well. We help our clients, prepare, submit their applications. We'll assist in representing before tribunals such as the Immigration and Refugee Board, and before the Federal Court of Canada as well. So a lot of the times people's practices can be divided between folks who litigate, so people who do go before the federal court and people who do regularly show up before the IRB, and folks who don't, who do more of the kind of application, some preparation and submission to IRCC or ESDC, so Employment and Social Development Canada, for the labor market impact assessment side of things. Not always, though. I know others who kind of blend those practices as well. Some people will have a practice that includes, refugee work in addition to the more corporate or economic work or the individual work. Some people separate those out and don't touch one or the other. So there's, kind of big and small ways that you can practice in the immigration legal landscape in Canada, and there's as many different ways to set up a firm or a practice as people want to, and the nature of that practice will shape, I think, the type of help they would need from something like an immigration legal assistant as well. So on the assistant perspective, if there's things that you're more or less interested in, there's probably a place that's going to be the right fit for you as well.
Oh, wow, that was really great. Thank you so much. Yeah, can you tell us a bit more about your career, educational background, and why you choose to work in immigration law?
Yeah, of course. So I think I say this every time, but I think I'm a true immigration nerd. I got into this field on the other side of things. I started off at IRCC. I was an officer there starting back in 2011, and I was there for 4 and a bit years. And then I went to law school and did as many immigration courses as I could there. And then right out of law school, I articled at an immigration firm, and it's been, immigration on the advocacy side ever since. So one way or another, I've been involved in Canadian immigration since 2011. So 14-ish years now, so a long time. And as I said, I went to law school in Ottawa. I went to the University of Ottawa there. Before that, I did my undergrad at Carleton University, kind of the traditional poli-sci to law school route. So, that was certainly kind of a helpful prep to go into law school. And then my experience at IRCC, I think, has allowed me to bring a bit of a different perspective to my practice now. Lots has changed at IRCC since then. We certainly didn't have Chinook or anything like that. I was there when GCMS was rolled out domestically, so it's too long to be of help that way, but I like to think that I can still put my old officer hat on and imagine what they are looking for anyways in terms of a strong application. And then the reasons for going into immigration are kind of twofold. One is just by luck. Like a lot of undergrad students in Ottawa, I got picked up in the federal public service through their federal student work experience program, and I was just randomly put into IRCC. It could have been any government department at that point, and I loved it. And I kind of got the bug that way. But on a more, I guess, personal side, on both sides of my family, I come from immigrants. So on my mom's side, my grandparents were refugees to Canada during the Second World War from Latvia. And then on my dad's side, he came when you could still sponsor siblings in the late 70s. So his sister came first from Australia, and then he came over afterwards. So I come by this trade honestly, I suppose.
Nice. That's very inspiring. Can you tell us a bit more about the Immigration Legal Assistant Diploma program?
Yeah, so this, it's a great program. There's a lot of different topics covered, everything from, legal accounting, which, is probably my least favorite topic in the everyday practice, but important to know nonetheless, all the way to kind of the nitty gritty around temporary residence and, refugee hearings and appeals and citizenship applications. So you do get a real mix of the kind of the business side of immigration law in Canada. So again, the accounting, working in a law firm or in a consulting firm, whatever the case may be, along with the actual substantive legal knowledge that you would need to be, effectively assisting, the lawyer or consultant that you're working for. And then I think probably the best part is the practicum piece at the end of it. There is a mandatory practicum where you get hands-on experience. So when you are, moving on from the program, you're well set to go in a real world setting, and you can show up and you can be applying for positions with hands-on experience doing the very work that you'll be hired for. So yeah, the combination, I think the theoretical, the substantive legal knowledge, and then the practicum piece is what makes the program pretty special.
Nice. Thank you for sharing all of that. What is your favorite part of the program, and what will students benefit from it the most?
Selfishly, I think my favorite part is meeting other people who are as interested and enthusiastic and passionate about Canadian immigration law as I am. I'll live and die, I think, by the Canadian immigration nerd title forever. So it's always surprising to me and refreshing to me what new perspectives can bring even to my own practice. The sessions when I'm teaching, I try and be as collaborative as possible. And so really creating that community within our own classrooms and I'd like to think that we're starting to develop the networks that you can use as your career progresses in the classroom. So one, you'll get the substantive knowledge. I've been doing this for a little while, but I also like to think that you'll be developing relationships with other people that you can reach out to when weird things happen, because weird things tend to happen in Canadian immigration, and you might need to reach out to somebody even outside of your firm and say, look, this is something that I'm dealing with right now. What are your thoughts about how we can proceed, and what's the best course of action here? And the more people that you can have as your support network in this field of law, I would say the better, just given all the constant changes, and clients have their own set of anxieties and personalities too. So yeah, the skills and the knowledge, but also the people in the community are I think what you'll walk away from the program with.
Totally. I feel like I get what you're saying a lot. Yeah, meeting people from different backgrounds, it makes a huge difference.
And people that will have their own perspectives, because there's a lot of cut and dry rules in immigration and things you have to do and have to include, but there's a lot of things that aren't clear, that are left up for interpretation, or where officers have discretion, or where there could be 2, 3, 4, 5 technically right ways to proceed, but which one's going to be the best and which ones have worked before. I mean, when you can reach out to other people to kind of source that experience and that knowledge and those perspectives, that's what's going to make your own practice and your own skill set stronger.
Yeah, totally. How would you describe your teaching style?
So I'm a fairly informal person. I tend to encourage a lot of discussion in my classes. I don't really believe in closed book anything in immigration law in Canada. It changes too quickly. So I tend to, yeah, I do a lot of in-class discussions. I expect people to come prepared and ready to have those classes, but to have those conversations, sorry. But really, I want us to have the opportunity to really work through whatever the issue is in that class. If we're talking about, heaven forbid, legal accounting, well, let's talk about it and figure out what the right ways to handle certain situations are. And if we're talking, nitty gritty temporary residence requirements, let's make sure we understand the root and the source of the laws that we're referencing, how they've played out in different decisions. This is where, case law will be really important as well. How we can navigate IRCC's many portals and forms and dealing with form versions. And, a big part of having a successful immigration practice and being even an assistant in that immigration practice is just staying up to date with everything from changes in requirements to changes in form versions, and it can all change on a dime. So just building those habits of, well, where do we look for these updates and how do we deal with portal oddities and malfunctions, and how can we make sure that forms are able to be opened by our clients? What are some ways that we can do that so that we're providing the best service possible as well? So I do a lot of the practical side of things, I would say, in the courses that I teach. The theory matters, the law matters, you need to know it, but it's not helpful unless you have some experience thinking about how it's going to play out in the real world.
Wow, yeah. I feel like I learn more like practicing, and yeah, staying up to date is something that, yeah, I guess in your field, I guess it's something that you need to do every day.
It's
Um,
an uphill battle. So yeah, I would say students, if they're with me anyways, and probably I think most instructors are this way too, if especially for the substantive courses around whether it's temporary entrance, permanent residence, the things like that, if there's an opportunity for you to, go off and draft a form and we can bring it all back and discuss, we'll do it. I do a lot of demos for portals so that you get a sense of, initiating applications, that sort of thing. And then a lot of the time, the resources that I'm using are IRCC's guides. The best place to look is right from the source itself, right? So I would say, and then that will carry you through to your practice. So I would say that's kind of a cornerstone of how I teach.
what are your expectations of students in this program? How much time will students need to dedicate each week to be successful?
Right. So, I mean, outside of kind of regularly scheduled class time, depending on the topic, I would say it's probably more intensive in terms of the volume of reading I would want people to do for the substantive courses around like the substantive legal knowledge. But even though I say that, and it's probably scarier than it actually is, I give links to IRCC's policies. I ask students to look at the forms so that they know what I'm talking about in class. And then, I expect students to come prepared having read that so that they can contribute and ask their questions. And I do a lot of kind of mock scenarios that I typically pull from cases that are ongoing. It always seems to be the case that I have something really kind of odd or strange or intense happening with my own clients when I'm teaching these. So I will remove all of the personal information and will kind of follow the life of one of my active cases at any given time. So I expect students to come curious and interested and ready to engage, and having done enough reading to meaningfully participate.
What are the career options or typical next steps for students after they graduate from the program?
Yes, so there's a few different places that I think students tend to end up. A lot of the times they'll end up in something called like a case manager position in a firm, either with lawyers or consultants, where they'll be responsible maybe for some of the drafting of forms, maybe initial drafting of submissions, depending on if that's their strength, managing clients, preparing documents, that sort of thing. Case managers, immigration legal assistant, very similar kind of jobs with different titles. I know some students have ended up in public sector institutions as well, within provinces, kind of assisting on program officer side. So program delivery on the, if you don't go into the private sector, if you're going to be on the public sector side of things. So I think that there's, and some I think have ended up at educational institutions as well, assisting on the student, international student mission sides, or at least that might have been more of a popular or open career choice before kind of all the changes to our international student programs. But I think that there is kind of, this diverse array of fields that you could end up in. And then as you build your skills, I know students have progressed over the years from kind of more entry-level case manager positions to having more responsibility and supervising other staff and becoming much more senior, and then sometimes even going on to become regulated immigration consultants themselves, or going through law school and becoming lawyers if they're feeling like they want to spend the time and investment doing that as well. So I think long-term trajectories there's a lot of different options and a lot of different career paths that could materialize.
That's great.
I think that's still the case, even though there's been all of these changes in Canadian immigration law. So there's been a lot of conversations that are kind of doom and gloom around the Canadian legal industry. And while I think there are, some firms that are, not hiring or maybe have had to reduce their staff, there are certainly others that kind of continue to grow and have adapted to the changes as well. So there's definitely still positions out there. There's still, I think, a viable career in the Canadian legal landscape, and for lawyers, consultants, representatives who are looking to stay able to serve their clients well, they need well-trained, highly skilled assistants a lot of the time to do that. So despite the doom and gloom, for people who are passionate and skilled and able and willing to learn, I still think that there's interesting and viable career paths available.
What's a typical day in the life of someone working as an immigration legal assistant?
Oh, that's a hard one. I don't know that there's a typical day in Canadian immigration law. Every day that I plan out certainly seems to go a little bit sideways, at least depending on what IRCC decides to do that day. But I think, typically a lot of the days will look like, seeing where deadlines are at. If there's a submission of an application package coming up, making sure that everything's ready to go for review for whoever it is that you're assisting, maybe following up with clients on documents that need to be sent in order to prepare applications, making sure that there's deadlines diarized in the consultant or lawyer's calendar. And every firm will have their different kind of pace and days for things. So I know some firms have a practice of having client meetings on specific days of the week. So maybe you'll be looking at those days, blocking that off and making sure meetings are set up. It could also be that, you need to, get a package ready for filing with the IRB or the federal court, again, depending where your work. So the nice thing about this field is you're unlikely to get bored because things do change so quickly. And there's always going to be something different, just given the kind of vast array of, applications that your firm could be working on at that point in time. So again, this will vary from firm to firm, what each day will look like, but usually some combination of form drafting, client management, document management, and making sure the calendar and activities of the lawyer consultant you're supporting are kind of reined in and well managed.
What advice would you give to students who are new to the field?
Build that community. build that community of people that you can reach out to. This field it's exciting. It's not gonna, again, you're certainly not going to be bored, but there's this kind of element of resilience that you need to have just by the way it works. We can prepare the best application possible. It could be, technically perfect, but we're not the final decision makers. And sometimes we see refusals come in for really strong applications, especially now. So having people that you trust and that support you so that you can, vent about it and recover and, continue the advocacy work that we do for our clients, even when it's hard, even when it can be unfair, I think is really important. So that support network of safe people, I think, is number one for everybody in this field. And I would say that to people who are lawyers, consultants as well, in addition to assistants, I think it's universal. And then also, staying curious. Again, by definition, things change so much and so frequently, and with little to no warning, that we have to have a practice of staying up to date. So knowing where to go to look for updates and just kind of building that into your daily or weekly routine, making sure that you're using the correct form versions. Again, small things like that, really, really important. Ask lots of questions, probably tied to curiosity, but for people who are starting out, there's a lot, as much as, there's a lot of information on IRCC's website and in manuals and in the case law, there's a lot that you just kind of learn by doing it over time, especially with things like navigating portals and dealing with, getting web forms in and navigating that and making sure they're seen by the right people. And so just asking, what's the best way to do this? Or, I can't seem to get this page on this portal to go to the next page. Like, what am I doing wrong here? And the answer is probably you're not doing anything wrong. It's probably a portal issue, but being comfortable asking people who've been doing it for a little while how they've managed to navigate some of these systems and tools is also going to be really, really important.
That's great advice. Thank you. I feel like having a support system on whichever field you're working is essential.
Yes, mandatory for everyone.
Yes. What's your number one reason why students should choose a career in immigration legal support, specifically through this program?
Well, I guess I can only see it probably through my lens. It's meaningful. It gives, for me, there's such a sense of purpose for every client that I'm able to help. It's a shared win between myself, the firm, everybody who was involved in getting the applications. So, working with my assistant, with the client together, when we're able to get that result, it's you're changing it, their whole life has changed when they're able to stay, even if it's on a temporary basis, right? So it makes the refusals very hard because if it's life-changing for the approval, it's life-changing for the refusal. But there's real sense of meaning, real sense of purpose and satisfaction. And we all develop our coping mechanisms for the hard decisions and navigating those with clients, and continuing the advocacy. But a career in this field will, for the clients that you can help, there's such an obvious difference in their lives that are made. And doing that well with the training that you get in a program like this one, particularly this one, you're going to be set up for success to get those results for the clients. And I think for me anyways, it's the wins over the years that have let me keep practicing despite some tough decisions that we've received over the years as well. So yeah, I would say the purpose and the getting to meet so many different people, learning so much about them and their life story, seeing what their immigration journey has meant to them and what they bring to Canada, their hopes, their dreams for the future, and being a part in that is just, there's no words for how special and how meaningful that can be, whatever part we play in that, whether we're the assistant or the lawyer or the student. Everybody is integral to making that happen. It's not just the lawyer. It's certainly not, it's not just the consultant who makes that win happen. It's the dedication and the work of every single person along the way.
That's so inspiring. As an immigrant from Mexico, I really appreciate all the help that your industry, your field brings to us. What has changed the most in your field since you started?
A broad shift, I would say, is that when I started, it felt like there was some flexibility on the part of officers, even some true assistance at times in getting applications put through and approved, and there was some facilitation in that process. Now it feels quite rigid when we're seeing kind of applications returned as incomplete erroneously, or refusals come out of certain offices that don't align with the documentation that was provided, and this kind of changing climate around having caps on the temporary residents and a reduced on the levels plan. It's it feels harder, because I think it is objectively harder than it once was to get approvals in certain circumstances. That being said, clients themselves have adapted to that. They are very well educated. They're very sophisticated and knowledgeable about the different programs out there. They're going to come to consultations and to the firm knowing lots of different options for their own situations, and it's our job to guide them through that and to prepare the strongest application possible. So I would say the amount of investment and knowledge that a typical client has, there's always been clients who are very, very knowledgeable, and most are, but the level of knowledge and detail of knowledge around the types of immigration programs that are available to them, I think, has really increased over the years, and a decrease, I would say, in any sort of flexibility on the part of IRCC. So again, this is where the skill and preparation really becomes very, very important when we're putting these applications together, to kind of make sure that we have our clients' interests at heart when we're filing these applications, just given that little bit of flexibility that might have been there before certainly doesn't exist in the same way.
That's good to know. Yeah, I bet that in this industry, things are changing all the time.
All the time. Oh yeah. There's not enough coffee in the world, I don't think, sometimes, to keep up. So
Yeah.
we somehow manage.
So let's go into our audience to see if they have any questions at this time. We have one asking, what days and times for classes schedules?
So it's typically, I mean, I know that there's both part-time and full-time options usually, and you could correct me if I'm wrong on this one. On the part-time side, I believe it's 3 hours once a week, but on the full-time, I think if it's more of an intensive, you're doing 3 hours a day. But again, I would defer to more recent class schedules than what I have in front of me. Okay, yeah. Oh, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m.
We have another one. Is it easy to find a job after the program?
I know a lot of students have had a lot of success, especially because there's that practicum at the end of the program. Of course, it's going to depend on where you're located, the needs of the firms in that city when you graduate. But the part that I think helps a lot is that practicum component at the very end of the program. Sometimes that practicum could lead to employment afterwards, and then if not, at least having the practical skills to kind of hit the ground running when you do join a firm will certainly be attractive to employers, I would say.
Thank you for answering that. I think we have another. How long to graduate if I'll take a full-time option?
Okay, 23
yeah,
weeks.
23
Wonderful.
weeks. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Can you tell a little bit more about the difference between synchronism and asynchronism delivery?
Yeah, so the synchronous delivery is kind of these live sessions 3 days a week, as it is, that you come online, and it's kind of a live interaction. And then the asynchronous would be recorded sessions where it's more you would be interacting with online recordings of the course, rather than being in a live course setting.
So thank you so much, Alexandra, for sharing your insight and experiences with us today. It's always so valuable for prospective students to hear directly from from an instructor to get a feel for what the program is like and gain a better understanding of what it's really like to work in the immigration legal field. So if you're interested in immigration legal assistant diploma program or want to take next steps, feel free to scan the code that will appear on the screen shortly. Thanks again for everyone who joined us today. Thank you,
Thank you so much for
Alexandra,
having me.
for everything. You were great. And I hope you found this session helpful. We look forward to connecting with you again.
Awesome.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much.